In Carol Senf's essay, Dracula, Stoker's Response to the New Woman, we are given an insight into her understanding of how the label New Woman signalled new or newly perceived forms of femininity which were brought to public attention in the last 2 decades of the 19th century. In her essay, Senf outlines how the vampire characters in Dracula portray the dreaded and feared sexual wantonness of a new woman. Senf states that Stoker's villainesses radiate sexuality, responding to the sexual freedom and reversal of roles which were often associated with the new woman. Stoker uses the ancient superstition of the vampire in Dracula to symbolize the evil that can result. She also explores how Mina Harker and Lucy Westenra portray certain aspects of the Victorian society and how men should and did respond. Through Senf's essay, it is possible to draw a parallel between the symbology of Stoker's vampires and the girl, also a vampire, in A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. The vampire, and therefore the new woman, is portrayed as a monster, aggressive, inhuman, wildly erotic, and motivated only by an insatiable thirst for blood. In Dracula, this monster is overcome and normality is restored. However, in A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, the role is reversed and the so-called monster, the girl, holds the power to make change. In Stoker's Dracula, we are presented with the 2 female characters, each initially very similar, but ultimately they choose different paths. Stoker uses Lucy and Mina to contrast the sexually liberated new woman and the more traditional woman. Outwardly, Lucy is rather dull and non-resistive. She reveals a covert desire to escape the constraints of Victorian society. Her desire for 3 husbands suggests a degree of latent sensuality, which connect her to the new woman of the period. Lucy is unhappy with her social role. She is torn between the need to conform and the desire to rebel. By day, Lucy remains an acquiescent and loving Victorian girl. By night, the other side of her character gains control, and Mina describes her as restless and impatient to get out. It is this restlessness which ultimately leads her to Dracula and to emancipation from her society's restraints. Van Helsing turns Lucy's body into a moral battlefield, and he ultimately convinces the others that her awakened sexuality and her attempt to reverse the traditional sexual roles are threats to them all. They conclude to destroy Lucy in her new state, and in doing so, return her to her original, compliant and beautiful state. Senf points out that the destruction of Lucy strongly resembles a sexual act. As Arthur plunged the stake into Lucy, her body shook and quivered and twisted in wild contortions. But Arthur never faltered, driving deeper and deeper the mercy-bearing stake. Lucy's character is strongly juxtaposed by Mina Harker, a character who combines the independence and intelligence often associated with the new woman with traditional femininity. Senf outlines that the new woman generally favours non-traditional professions such as medicine, nursing and business. Although Mina pursues education, she seeks knowledge which will assist her in assisting her husband, Jonathan. Mina says, "I have been working very hard lately because I want to keep up with Jonathan's studies, and I have been practicing shorthand very assiduously. When we are married, I shall be able to be useful to Jonathan." This shows her commitment to both Jonathan and the role of the Victorian woman. She is also often described as pure and free of impure desires, showing her strength in resisting the urge to follow in Lucy's footsteps, becoming sexually liberated. Although Mina shows traits associated with the new woman, before her marriage, once married, she strongly adopts a very traditional role and remains supportively in the background until Jonathan asks for assistance. Mina shows her true commitment to Jonathan when she confesses that she succumbed to Dracula because he had threatened Jonathan. Mina truly embraces her commitment to the role of the traditional woman when she asks the men to destroy her if she shows any signs of following in Lucy's footsteps and starts to resemble a vampire. It is this statement by Senf that truly sums up Mina's character. By emphasizing Mina's intelligence, her ability to function on her own, and her economic independence before marriage, Stoker stresses certain aspects of the new woman. But by negating her sexuality, having her adopt a more traditional feminine role, and by showing her decision to abide by the group's will instead of making an individual decision, he also reveals that she is not a new woman. Senf also includes her perception of Dracula as a symbol. She exclaims that Dracula is the supreme bogeyman, a creature who means different things to different people, for example, death and bridegroom par excellence, the threat of the barbarian attempting to overtake the civilized world, the Antichrist, or he represents the power of the isolated individual. Senf's perception that the vampire represents the isolated individual is a continued theme in A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. The girl is a monstrous feminist anti-hero who preys on immoral men so that she can protect the female residents of Bad City from the violence of patriarchy. In her movie A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, Anna Lily Amirpour portrays the traditionally seen monster as a hero. This embodiment of society's fears, the vampire, is now responsible for protecting society from the type of men who created the monsters in the first place. By using this symbology with the help of Senf's analysis of the modern woman, it is possible to conclude that Amirpour is trying to say that the individual, the monster, the oppressed and the feared, will always have some sort of power over traditional society. The Vampire in A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night is a comment on how the current feminist perspective in Iran with women is challenging gender expectations. By challenging expectations and norms, we're able to progress as a society. Unless we challenge these expectations, oppression will always be present. By the end of the film, both Artie and Arash know the girl is a monster, and they accept her because they see themselves reflected in her. This differs from Stoker's Dracula, as by the end of the novel, all otherness had been destroyed, allowing the traditional woman to be restored to her pure self. In conclusion, through Stoker's Dracula and Amirpour's A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, we are encouraged to reflect upon how a woman with sexual freedom is perceived in society. In Dracula, a sexually free woman is perceived as dirty and impure and quickly destroyed. In contrast, in A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, despite the girl showing characteristics of being dirty and impure, it is shown that she is actually the one making the most difference in society, and eventually her otherness is embraced.